We're waiting, just waiting one more speaker.
Okay.
So hopefully he texted me. He's like, traffic is so horrible. So
yeah, it is pretty bad.
I know. It's so hard to find parking and just even get here actually.
But yeah. What about you? So since we have a small group,
yeah.
What's your story? What's your background? Like
my story is I just recently moved to Austin a couple months ago. I was based in Dubai before that, and I've done a lot of work in Egypt, and I'm interested in kind of some of the other opportunities related to Africa in general, Egypt and
what specifically in Egypt?
Sorry?
What specifically in Egypt?
I've done a bunch of stuff, but I'd say most of it has been related to healthcare. I've done some healthcare stuff in Egypt. I did some other stuff, kind of like retail, food and beverage, consumer-related product stuff in Egypt.
I have to talk to you then after.
Okay.
I'm in CPG, natural goods, export, import, all that stuff.
Yeah.
After.
Sure. Yeah.
Did you live there as well?
I never lived in Egypt. I was based in Dubai, and I used to just commute back and forth a lot. My parents live in Egypt, and I go pretty much. I was going pretty much like a few times a year. I was there, I go on projects and stuff. So.
Cool. I just went to Egypt for the first time.
Really?
December 1st through 8th.
Nice. So you were there at a good time.
Yeah, with was one of the speakers at the I always forget this stuff. This is why some of the company names.
Yeah, you got to write them down too. But sometimes they're in a different language too. You got to be like,
no, it's just Uprise.
Yeah.
It's the main conference, and so it was really cool to get to go there.
What were you? So you were there for work for like?
Yeah, just as a speaker at that conference.
Oh, okay. The Rise conference?
The Rise conference.
Rise conference.
Yeah.
I know what Rise.
Yeah, that's.
So what were you speaking about?
Impact generation, startups that actually solve human need, and then connecting it with a bunch of them. I probably got to interact with 30 or so different deals that week.
Oh wow.
Just interacting. And also, I went to Flat 6 Labs. Spent some time with those guys.
Oh, F6?
Yeah. I think it's Flat 6. F6 is the group that's in
England?
UK, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, this is a co-working place that also has an investment group behind it. And I got to see everything from there's a bunch of upcycling stuff to really interesting spectrometer on a chip technology. It's like, wow, that's cool that came from here versus somewhere else. Really high-end kind of stuff.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, Egypt's one of those places that really has so much unique needs to it as a country on its own that they innovate, around those needs in ways that are really interesting and, works for them, not necessarily in other places, but can work in other places that are similar. So
that was what's interesting is they were asking me questions about other parts of Africa. I'm not an expert. The thing that I usually, and this is what I was saying here, no expertise in Africa. I just know. We've worked with startups in Nigeria. Well, I've been on the ground in Nigeria and in Egypt. Only 2 countries and 54 countries.
Well, I feel like that was super relevant.
Well, I think I have an insight. Yeah, I definitely have an insight, but because I get to see a lot.
Well, so what do you do? What
I started Tech Ranch. Tech Ranch is the first privately funded incubator here in Austin. I started the first co-working space here as well. And been a long-term technology entrepreneur. Kind of had a personal tragedy, decided to go back, and I love startups to help entrepreneurs build more startups. And so that's what Tech Ranch is. Tech Ranch is kind of like the UN SDGs meets Industry 4.0 is one of my European friends. That's how she called it. But we have a lot of programs for helping entrepreneurs do everything from U.S. market entry to one of my favorite projects, although I haven't been on the ground there, is through our network, a bunch of our Australian entrepreneurs solving a problem in Ethiopia.
Australian?
Yeah, Australians in Ethiopia. And that happened through my personal network. so the main thing is like, well, my favorite way of saying it, not to steal my thunder when I was supposed to say hot seat.
Yeah.
Is all the world's problems are already solved.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of taking the solution from one place and
Putting it somewhere else. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so you live here now?
I just moved. Yeah.
Yeah.
Literally like 2.5 months ago.
And what
So like the last project and kind of gig I was on was a family business, but it was basically running a group of medical centers based in Dubai. And you know, I kind of got back into healthcare after many years not being in healthcare, but got involved in a lot of consumer-related solutions, you know, healthcare-wise, and got me kind of back into. I started my career very early, 20 years ago, in telemedicine and telehealth. We were very, very early in terms of actual like, you know, implementation of some of the stuff that was kind of being talked about or developed as products and solutions around, you know, telemedical care, basically. And I just kind of, lots of other factors in Dubai kind of created a need for us to leave and come back to the States. And, you know, so my wife and I decided to come back, and I looked at the U.S. market, where should we go, and Austin was kind of the top place for us to land.
Cool.
So, yeah.
Well, and only been in, what, a couple months?
Yeah, 2 months, yeah.
Yes, Africa.
Africa.
Yes.
You didn't even have to ask him.
Hi.
I'm Obi.
Okay, man.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Right.
I'm also Kevin.
Oh, really?
Raj.
Nice to meet you. What's your name? Obi. Nice to meet you. Right.
Fun.
Are we just waiting?
Yeah.
Sorry, let's probably step out and
Everyone's
see.
conversation going.
Yeah. I mean, since we have a small group of us that started talking, and the official stuff can happen however it happens.
Yeah.
It took me some time.
Yeah, I was thinking,
Yeah.
What type of stuff you're looking to do now? Are you doing now?
So, you know, I want to stay in healthcare, health tech, if possible. You know, there's a lot of cool, promising solutions and products and business models that are getting funded pretty well now. And my end goal is really to potentially, down the road, take some of these technologies and solutions back to the Middle East and implement them, you know, in a way that can work there. So, you know, I tried and tested stuff that was there that at the end of the day was just imitations of things that are happening here. And
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
Cool. We should talk about it.
Yeah.
I was just in Ramallah. Well, I was in Moscow, Tunis, Tel Aviv, Ramallah, Cairo, Oklahoma City, Monterrey, Mexico.
Sorry, please grab drinks, water, whatever you
I
want.
feel like one of those kids is not like the others.
Yeah. But Texan is still another country.
Yeah.
I like making fun of my friends in Oklahoma.
Yeah, I like saying, what country are you from? Texas. They never challenge it.
Greatest nation in America, right?
Period.
Well,
So, you know what, since we're sort of still waiting on the other speaker, we can sort of just go around.
Yeah, it'd be great to
Just
hear from
quickly,
everybody.
yeah, just your background while you're here, what you want to get from this. And then we'll probably do a bit of that at the end for the people that came later, so.
All right.
Yeah, sure.
All right. Yeah, hello. My name is Obi Machuku, and the VP of Client Success with a good-looking company. And,
With, sorry?
a good-looking company.
Oh, a good-looking company, okay.
Yeah, that's the point of. Yeah. I don't know. I was upstairs for the Black History Month event.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I saw this. As I was buying my ticket for that one, I saw this one.
Nice.
So, well, I'm
Why
African
not?
myself. Why not? So,
Thank you for coming.
no problem.
Yeah.
My name is Bana. I work in tech in Austin like everybody else. But same as him, I'm also African. I'm interested in
Which
startup.
country?
Eritrea, South Africa. And I was just there in January, and a few months before that I was in Kenya. So there's a lot of things that I saw while I was there. It's like, it's good, you know, it's
Yeah.
so simple that, you know, there's already a solution.
Right,
Why-
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's kind of why I'm here when I hear
Obi, which?
A country?
Yeah,
I'm
which
from
country?
Nigeria.
Nigeria?
Yes.
Which city?
From Imo State.
Cool.
Yeah, the best thing.
Welcome.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Hi.
Should I just
Yeah, just sit
somewhere?
anywhere.
You're up.
Yeah, I guess I-
You're up.
Yeah,
Sit.
I don't have to sit on the outskirts.
Okay. Okay, so I think,
I'm Raj Shah, I'm an entrepreneur here in Austin for about 22 years. Software, a little bit of hardware. So just looking at different opportunities to invest in or join or start a company.
right.
Well,
I'm Kevin. I'm also in software here in Austin. We're just kind of curious what was alive and surviving over there, or what, if there's a connection to Austin.
I'm glad to find out too.
My name's Omar. Just moved to Austin a couple months ago, but I've done a lot of work in the Middle East and mostly in Egypt. And started a few companies there and had some experience dealing with the realities of a third world kind of market system and government, bureaucratic, regulatory framework. So just interested to hear other war stories.
I'm Chaz. I'm in tech, so I basically support like nonprofits and faith-based organizations with like their systems and administrative stuff.
Who do you do that for, or is it just something you do?
I support them, so there's a group of them that I do for, but
Okay.
some in Austin, some in Nashville.
But are you part of a company, or is this is this just yours?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, why, what do you
Oh,
hope to
so
get?
yeah. So I'm just interested. Like I have
Yeah,
I have
okay.
no alternate objective. It's kind of like,
I
kinda
know,
like, hey,
ulterior
like this
motives
looks
here.
super. Yeah, like
Yeah.
this looks super interesting.
Yeah.
Like, let me see what's going on. Right. So yeah, that's it.
I'm Chris. I'm transdisciplinary designer. I like to make things up. And my current project that I'm pushing forward more than anyone I've ever done is an extreme environment agricultural system, be it desert, polar regions, or space, something that can withstand our climate change as previous setting of the world. And Africa's got some fairly extensive climate extremes, and like to find out more about what the climate's like for startup businesses.
Okay.
I have a background in sciences.
Okay. I can go. So, welcome everyone. Yeah, I know these should. Okay. Welcome. My name is Ukema. So, I put this together as part of an event for the Beta Collective. And the point of the Beta Collective is an initiative, and the point of it is to create a network of entrepreneurs and companies that are Africa focused, and just investors also interested in that ecosystem. I've done a couple of events. I did an event during Austin Startup. I held a panel for Austin Startup Week, and what I got out of that for Austin was that people are interested and people don't really know anything about the ecosystem. So just started that conversation with the hope of building strategic partnerships long term. We were saying possible connections. I'm looking for that too. Whether it's like the actual talent, because there's a lot going on in different parts of Africa, from Nigeria is a well-known country in that region, Kenya, East Africa, so just a lot of that. My background is actually in medicine, so not even related. And then I am currently working on building a coffee company. So yeah, so I was recently in Rwanda learning how to grow coffee. I know. So I can
Do they
process
grow
coffee.
coffee in Rwanda? Is that a big export of theirs? Or?
Yes, they export. Welcome.
How are they going to deal with the climate change?
I don't know. So I need to read up more about that. But
Because the zones are moving around or moving up the mountains.
yeah, a lot of the literature I've seen so far has been more about concern in South America versus in Africa. As far as coffee, which I've done a lot of research on. But yeah, anyway, I can get your information if I find something interesting, get back to you, but I don't know a lot about how climate changes directly. I mean, I know in a very general sense, but not like specific to those regions. Yeah. But yeah, so that's my background. Yeah, and I'm doing this, like I said, to build partnerships and to get people talking, build network. And hopefully, we can build something where if someone's building something in Vegas and needs a co-founder that is connected in Austin, we have a network to make that happen. And that's the kind of collaboration that makes things go a lot faster. So, yeah. Okay, and these are our two speakers. Welcome. Yeah, so Kevin, you can go.
Yeah, so I'm the founder of Tech Ranch. Tech Ranch was the first privately funded incubator here in Austin. I also opened up Austin's first co-working space.
Yeah.
And long-term technology entrepreneur. Started my first company here about 25 years ago. Left and came back a bunch. Done a lot of work with Tech Ranch around the world. I can talk a little bit about what I know about Africa. I mean, I by no means, it sounds like he's the Africa startup expert, but worked with entrepreneurs in Nigeria in the healthcare space, worked with entrepreneurs in Egypt, more in the circular economy space. We have a project from Australia that we connected into Ethiopia. I have a faith-based project that I helped out in Mozambique, a coaching project in Kenya. So I know something about it, but I by no means see myself as an expert at that. But we've had that work with entrepreneurs around the world, so I can kind of give a perspective of being in country, 22 different countries around the world. And so that's more of my general expertise. Our focus is really on what we call impact innovation, technology that solves human need. And so a lot of my thought, or Tech Ranch was selected in the top 3 social impact incubators in the US a while back. So that's kind of my thought process. Very cool.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Dami. Sorry, I'm a little bit late. Austin traffic can be very interesting after 5 o'clock. I'm originally from Nigeria. Currently live in Austin, Texas here. I founded a company about 10 years ago in Nigeria named Lofty Inc. But the focus of the company was social impact and how we can change the narrative. And we founded the first incubation hub in Lagos, working with the Entrepreneurship Development Center of Nigeria in 2009. We gained a lot of grounds as one of the first incubators to start where nobody knew what incubators was in Nigeria. We were featured along with another well-known incubator in Nigeria, CC Hub, in the McKinsey Global Report of 2013 of the emerging markets and how innovation is driving those growth. From there, we pivoted into launching our first fund to invest in companies that were going through our hub as a complete cycle or a complete loop. One of our very early investments companies that are well known now, Flutterwave as an example, Prentivo in Nigeria. And we continue to build from there, working with several universities, kind of pulling out students from the final year of graduating class into the incubation for them to start their own business. One of the most successful one that we have right now is a crop to cash company that's a agricultural logistics aggregation company. We also dabbled into some of this work ourselves. We're just waiting for people to do it. So me and my partners put together a bottom of the pyramid aggregation for medicine dispensaries and pharmacists in Nigeria, which we applied to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and we got funding all the way to the $1 million mark to prove the concept in Nigeria. The funding, the grant funding ended last year, June, and now we've pivoted that company into a private company that's now raising funds, and given the fact that we've tested the concept in the local market. So a lot of the last 10 years have been spent in the tech space within Nigeria, and in my day life, I spend my time working for Google here in Austin as well.
Thank you, and welcome. Okay, so I have some questions for you guys. I'm gonna be looking at my phone here and there. So what would you say are some common misconceptions about, let's just say, the ecosystem as a whole? Remember, get that started. What are things you've heard and you're like, no, based on my experience, I don't think so?
I mean, well, one of the easy ones that everyone seems to be making mistakes from my perspective is that they think of Africa as Africa. I mean, it's the reason I was asking, okay, what country are you from?
Yeah,
I mean,
no one usually asks that.
yeah, and so, I mean, now I'm lucky that I've gotten to travel the world a lot for my work, and so, you get the same thing for Chileans that get confused for Argentinians or something like that, right? And that's one big deal. The second thing that I think is, I don't think Americans understand how the world is waking up to entrepreneurship. And it's not just here, it's not just in, I work with a lot of entrepreneurs mainly in the Americas, not just the US, but all of the Americas. But it's waking up in a massive way. And I think that there's the ignorance that scares me the most about this is that, not realizing what the power of entrepreneurship and how transformative it's been. I saw that on my trips recently to Nigeria and Egypt as well. I can talk a lot more about that, but that kind of gives you to answer your question.
Okay.
Very similar from my perspective. One size doesn't fit all, and that's the approach most people look at when they consider Africa. And I'll use a very specific example that I scream at the top of my voice and it seems as if people don't listen. Google, as an example, has the unit called the next billion users, right, which is focusing on emerging markets. Within the next billion users, the test case of it is India. Now, you could compare, there are a lot of similarities between India and most countries in Africa. Nigeria, as an example, in terms of population size, a democracy, an English-speaking country, there are a lot of similarities within them. However, the engineering teams of these companies are more focused on India and roll out products from India and think that those products will most likely naturally be adopted in Africa, taking that one-size-fits-all approach. And an example of that is the Google station, the Wi-Fi station that was rolled out. It was widely successful in India, but a total failure in Nigeria. And now it's been deprecated. It's one of those Google products that ends in the graveyard of Google with all its products. And that's an example of how people have this misconception that one size fits all. It's an emerging market, it's a developing economy. If it works in India, if it works in a South American country, you can apply it to an African country. You talked about also the aspect about looking at Africa as a whole, as one. Just within West Africa alone, you have the Francophone-speaking countries and the English-speaking countries, and it's two totally different dynamics. Whatever you want to do within the English-speaking countries, you cannot just plug and play the same approach in the Francophone-speaking countries. Then you also have the dynamics of cultural backgrounds. You look at Nigeria as a whole. I'll speak more about Nigeria, given that I'm from Nigeria. You have the north, predominantly Muslim, the south, which is split between the east and the west. Different dynamics in terms of the products that you will roll out within that. So some of the misconception is going into it and thinking, well, yeah, it's a barren ground, there's a lot of opportunities there, but not understanding all those nuances and those dynamics within each of those regions. I think one great example right now is Go-Kart. How many people know about Go-Kart here? Okay, so Go-Kart is your Uber app stepped down to motorcycles.
Okay.
It was a successful entrepreneur from India, I believe.
I don't know where it's from.
Yeah, somewhere from one of the Asian countries. Made his money, exited, and decided, well, this can work in a place like Nigeria, and went in and launched Go-Kart. He launched it in the most populous city in Nigeria, Lagos, that has about 20 million people. It was widely successful when it started. Everybody had a go-kart hat. And given the standard of living, you know, not everybody could afford an Uber ride, so it was a motorcycle that worked. They did a whole lot of training, they got new bikes, they did wonderful work. And about a month ago, the new governor of Lagos State yanked it.
Outlawed it?
So what?
He outlawed it?
He outlawed it. Pull it off. Now, the masses and the population wants the service. There was a lot of pain points around, well, we are walking to the point, we're walking a whole lot more, where this go-karter provided a solution. But the government is not paying attention. Now, it was interesting that go-karter went to Nigeria and launched, but launched and focused mainly in Lagos. Whereas Nigeria has 36 states, has more cities other than Lagos, that they could have expanded. But taking that one-size-fits-all approach and going into one particular city, I would say two things happen with go-karter as an example will be, one, you could have all the money and the knowledge and the technical abilities for you to go into, but if you do not have the policy and political connect to address that, what happened to go-karter can happen to anybody. A new government change, even though it's democratically elected, could wake up one morning and say, we don't want your product any longer, and outlaw it. So those are the kind of things that most people don't pay attention to, those kind of nuances of creating or developing a company or entrepreneurship in Africa. So that's just one example.
Yeah, I can throw out one other one that I think is interesting is that the opportunity across the countries of Africa, there's a lot of Americans again that have like this concept that the solution is whatever we got, you know, right over here in Texas is what we should take over to them boys over there. I've seen a lot of that as well. One of the things, I think there is a lot of opportunity to bring in products to different countries. One of my favorite examples though is we have a biosafety expert out of Mexico that's actually going to Egypt, since we were talking about Egypt earlier today. And that's really interesting because part of it has to do with, there's 4 different levels of labs that you have. And you know, in the United States, we have a lot of money, so we can actually build level 4 labs. But the expertise in Mexico is more at the level 3 level, and the need in Egypt is kind of that same level. I mean, there's still this fourth level that's needed, but they're not going to be able to get there. There's just not enough money, so let's use best practice at this level as well. And so some of the stuff that we're getting to see from our perspective of the network, you know, because a lot of what I get to see is more like spread, is things like that, where you actually, the answer is not to take whatever we've got in the US there, but to look at it from a different place.
Right. I feel like you guys already covered a lot of the, okay, you can go, but after that, we'll probably wait till the end, just so we get.
I was just going to summarize what you're talking about here is what is an appropriate technology for whatever the scenario is. Don't apply, adapt.
Yeah.
I was gonna have that. One great example that always comes to mind for me was when I was living in Nigeria. I grew up in Nigeria. I spent the first 20 years of my life in Nigeria, and we didn't have cell phones. Cell phones were a luxury, right? I also feel like majority of the generations, growing generations in Africa, skipped the landline technology and jumped to the smartphone technology. We skipped an entire generation.
Lucky them.
Lucky them, right? But this is where you kind of look at the double-sided view of Africa as a whole, where one of the misconceptions of people looking at Africa from this perspective of a charity case consistently. So I remember when Nigeria decided to go the GSM network and issue the GSM licenses. I don't think any American company considered it.
I think it was Suez that came in from Egypt, right?
Yeah. So one came in from Egypt. But the biggest company, or the biggest driver then was MTN from South Africa. Took a plunge. Now, it was a blank slate. No cell towers, nothing. Infrastructure was zero. And most people will look at it and consider that to be a basket case, a charity case. I don't want to go there.
But before MTN, wasn't there Mo Ibrahim? What was that company?
Econet.
Okay.
So the GSM license were all issued about the same time. So you had MTN, you had Econet.
Okay.
There were about 3 companies that kind of came in where majority of the big telecoms around the world turned it down. MTN did their projections, and I think it was projected that the ROI on all the investment was going to take about over 15 plus years or more. They got it back in 3 to 5 years within Nigeria. They couldn't account for several cultural differences in Nigeria, so something to make you laugh about it. In Nigeria, your status is determined by the number of cell phones you carry. You can speak about that, right? So nobody could.
More than one physical.
More than one physical phone.
Okay. Just checking.
Yeah, more than one physical phone. Nobody could really account for that when putting a business plan together, right? To say this is how this is going to roll out. And because of the fact of the infrastructure being developed, it became part of everyday life that you carried a cell phone from each of the carriers within the country. Because you could be in a place where there was spotty service from one carrier and there was better service from there. Now, if we had applied a blank template of how most American companies would have looked at that business model, nobody will have gone in there. Now, MTN, the Econet, who ended up becoming Etisalat and a few other companies, they captured market share like crazy that anybody who's trying to come in now will find it difficult establishing because they have the market share and they've been driving that hard within Nigeria. So adoption has gone up, the use has gone up, which has also increased access to internet. You say most people are using smartphones, which is also then driving this new generation of entrepreneurs and innovators, right? People are seeing things that ideally when I was growing up, it was like, except you have cable, you could say. Now I have people within Nigeria who come and say, oh, did you see that on Netflix? And I'm like, I've not even watched it. Like, how did you get there, right? And you can see a lot of companies tapping into that. I think last week, Netflix launched Netflix Nigeria, which is specifically geared to the Nigerian population. Again, you're talking about a country of 200 million, and that's just one country.
Actually, I'm going to interrupt there. I'm going to take a step back. You guys already started talking on it, but for people that are interested, like if they have a company or thinking of expanding or just exploring that market, what ways should we think of the trading blocks? So for example, a lot of times when we talk about companies or companies that are choosing like a beachhead market or a region, they'll say, okay, we're going to East Africa, and then they try to conquer East Africa, or I'm going to West Africa. What other ways of market entry? What are the other strategies for market entry should companies or people think about when it comes to Africa? Because we just talked about not thinking about Africa just as a whole because of the different ethnic groups, just the diversity within the continent, obviously. But in your opinion, what are some great ways to approach the market or different markets there?
You want to go first?
So my strategy and the way that, like, how is it that we've been able to do all this different? So I've been in 5 countries since November 1st, as an example, and the whole way that the whole way that was made possible was through relationships. Now, part of it is I grew up in Texas. I've done a lot of business in Mexico, and I've done a lot of business in Chile. I lived and worked in Mexico, and I lived and worked in Chile, and so I take kind of that cultural frame, and I look at the world with it. And I know that that's partially what's had me be in 22 different countries myself. Relationships, I think, really matter. Now, most of the experience in my experience as a business person has been in B2B versus B2C, and I think you have different strategy if you're actually in a more general B2C, which might be interesting to hear more from someone else that might know more about the B2C on each one of the different countries of Africa. But it's always, for me, been about relationships. and then figuring out how to be opportunistic, having a partnership on the other side, not trying to project insight that you don't have sitting here in Austin, Texas.
Networking, building over this kind of events, getting to know people. It's almost impossible for you to walk into a country that you don't know and establish something without having the right network. And that network expands beyond just from a business network to even governmental networks. You'll have a lot of different policies that affect production or affect businesses as a whole from country to country. I'll use specific examples. I'll use two examples of, I think even in doing trade or establishing any kind of business, understanding the kind of trade policies that exist within that country, within Africa and the rest of the world, what you can take in, what you can take out. As an example, so I'll give two examples. Majority of Reebok apparel is now produced in Lesotho.
Did not know that.
Yeah. The reason is Lesotho is one of the countries in Africa that has total free trade with Europe and the US.
Oh.
And because of its proximity to South Africa, they also enjoy the infrastructure of the shipping or the logistics industry of South Africa. So majority of Chinese companies now that are producing these apparels are sitting their factories in Lesotho. Most of the time know that. Now, anyone who's going into business, it's something that's very specific to that, or even catering to that industry, knowing those kind of trade policies will make a lot of difference in terms of what you do. On the flip side of that, and an example of going into a country and establishing the right networks to know what's happening, is my country of Nigeria, who decided that sometime last year they were going to shut all the land borders. So all the neighboring countries that border Nigeria will shut down the border because Nigeria says there's a lot of smuggling that takes place there. Now, that had a lot of downstream effects on businesses as a whole. For those who want to take in any product into the country, if it's not a intellectual type product, that it's a physical product, it means that your options of getting things into the country gets a little bit more tricky and dicey. It also affects the regional way you look at each of African countries, because that border closure affected Ghana, affected Benin Republic, Togo. So there are a lot of these policies and what I call nuances that, one, the media here doesn't carry, so you rarely know about them or you rarely hear anything about them. And the networks that you have of people locally, to the point you said, you could be in Austin and not try to put the face that I know all about an African country and I'm going to tell you what to do and how to do, rather developing the likes of the network. I'm going to put a plug in here, like the gentleman sitting back here, one of the shining examples of what who came out from Nigeria, founded a company, Jobman, very similar to your Indeed or your job networks here, did very well in Nigeria. Now, I'm sure if you ask him, the plug and play examples of what's obtainable in Nigeria is not necessarily the same thing as what's obtainable here. And for somebody who wants to now create a business like that in Nigeria, having that kind of network of somebody who created a business in Nigeria, started a business, exited the business, knows how to navigate the bureaucracies within the government, becomes very essential in anyone who wants to create something within this kind of environment. And I know I'm speaking so much about Nigeria, but I think it's obtainable for every other African country.
Okay, so based on what you've said so far, just any business or any startup trying to get into that, because the ways to insulate themselves is to know the trade policy, have connections, know people, work with people that have already successfully exited the market, and then what other things would you say would be necessary for a starter to insulate themselves. Yes, we do know it's a risky market. I mean, these are frontier markets. But what are some other ways besides what we've already just mentioned of further insulating themselves? Like, and you just gave an example of Go-Kata and a lot of the other motorcycle mobility apps. A new policy came, and a lot of them were not well distributed outside a single city, or didn't have a good plan or didn't have a pivoting plan or whatever early enough. So that's like investors' money, just like, but, so yeah, what would you say are some ways to further insulate?
But two quick things. It's surprising the amount of difference in accounting and just the laws.
Yeah.
And I assume everyone would know that, but you know, it's interesting. Since we work with a lot of entrepreneurs around the world, that you know, like you can actually have liability that you could put in jail for, right? And whereas in this country, you know,
We have bankruptcy.
yeah, we have bankruptcy law and stuff like that, but even, I was always surprised. So I've done, again, I'm gonna use my example as a lens that I look at. My first dollars in for my first startup were pesos in Mexico. I was an Austin entrepreneur, this is 25 years ago. Accounting laws in Mexico are significantly different than here. And I would think there's more of a common understanding, but that's not true. Even with our next door neighbors right here, and you have to have a completely different accounting system, completely different set of attorneys, and all sorts of other stuff. Now, especially for like you're saying physical products, which physical products I know very little about because I've always been a software guy, but it is surprising about that.
One of the things that I feel like could insulate is understanding the purchasing power. The purchasing power there. So even within software, the example we gave about the Go-Kata, which is navigating the bottom of the pyramid. It's at that bottom of the pyramid that you're targeting and knowing that that's your market. I think the misconception of going in there thinking you're going to have the same people or the same type of purchasing power of what you have in an area like Austin here would not make any business successful. So how do you inoculate yourself will be understanding your market, right? Knowing the details of who you're dealing with within the market, their purchasing power, their habits, their behaviors, what are the trends that are shifting within those kind of regions.
Should I have a buddy in the government also? Would that help me?
That's always a nice to have.
Isn't it nice to have or a necessity? Yeah, right.
It'd actually be interesting, yeah.
Okay, right.
So let me just check something there. So yes, you should definitely put in the government. And I think there are two governments here. There's the government in Africa, then in the countries, and also there's like foreign governments who are keen on like developing infrastructure in those countries. So I know, for example, that the World Bank has like World Bank guarantees that they can give if you're going to start a business that's going to develop infrastructure, create employment at scale in Africa, right? Such that if the government should I say back out of an agreement or is unable to meet some obligations, right, or changes the law, right, you could definitely get like to a large extent most of your capital back.
I will say, because you brought up World Bank, I actually know a company, my music, they got funding grant from World Bank, but the way World Bank dispenses the funds is through tertiary parties, and these people actually told them that they would have to split the money 50-50 for them to get anything. So that's shady. But they were just like, no, well, you know what? F that. We're not doing that. So yeah. But anyway, there's so many
that
stories.
actually brings up another thing that's interesting is, so when I was in Abuja in Nigeria, right, they came back to the States, and I thought, you know, there's supposedly all these programs here that, you know, the U.S. government does. The EU took more interest in the projects we were doing, and so the alliance that you might leverage is not with, you know, not the home. You know, home team, it's like actually the EU, which was really kind of surprising. And we're figuring that out, but it's like the EU is really, I was surprised by how much EU presence was there. Of course, we all read about the Chinese presence there, but it was interesting that how much concern there was, and they actually followed up with us first versus the other way around.
I just found out this afternoon, I think the Austin Chamber of Commerce or something has pretty much initiatives that are geared specifically for countries in Africa, but no one implements it. I was just told this afternoon, and the person that was telling me was like, why isn't no? It's like, well, there's no advocate, and not knowing, but not knowing what's also available, which is, I guess, the point of doing stuff like this. It's good to know that, because if you're a company here trying to do something with that, those initiatives might be really helpful. It's softening the blow or softening the price of doing business in different parts of Africa.
Yeah, and there is one of the things I'll reiterate that I thought this is really cool that you're doing this type of thing, because the city of Austin's lost 4 of their economic development employees, and 2 of them were the 2 people who were doing international economic development, all in the last 4 months.
Oh, wow.
And so when you realize that the whole staff of economic development, I don't know what the total number is, but it's not that large of staff. It seems like something happened where, I don't know, I don't want to pick on the city because I kind of like our city, but it was kind of weird that it's almost like someone forgot that the world's a great market.
Yeah.
You know, not just Africa, but
right.
So we do have some stuff that I think we privately have to figure out how to organize more. Assuming that, when 4 people leave in that short period of time, it means something.
Yeah.
What does it mean? I can't tell you. I don't know.
We have to track them down and find out what happened. Okay, so you mentioned Well and Health a little earlier, which is a company you work with in Abuja. Can you, you can use any other company you have more experience with, but can you tell us what you think that company is doing right in that space, and what they can do to improve? Or
the way that our original connection with Nigeria is, there's a group here in town called the Pandemic Tech Accelerator, and part of what they're about is how can you, especially right now with what's happening, right? It's a very interesting time for this accelerator. The idea is they gain resources to then go off and help startups around the world, or entrepreneurs around the world, solve for pandemic issues. And as an example, Wella Health, there's another company called Inoculate, there's another company called Sample Movers. We had essentially it was called a hackathon, although it was a little bit more of a contest, where essentially we worked with, there's already a group of entrepreneurs that are running. Each one of them was a doctor, typically on the team, that knew some issue around infectious diseases. As an example, Wella Health takes on, I said I'm going to actually screw up my diseases. I'm dyslexic, and every once in a while I have a dyslexic moment. Malaria. Yeah, malaria. It's insurance for malaria.
Insurance, yeah.
And what's interesting is, like, among the 3 guys who started Wella Health, in their lifetimes, all consolidated, that had malaria more than 50 times. When you think about that, you realize that you're making a choice between, pharmaceuticals that take care of a condition versus like basic living. This idea of health insurance for this one condition is actually pretty cool. So they came up with a test that could be done at the pharmaceutical level, the pharmacy level. So you didn't have to send samples back and forth and stuff like that. And they came up with a way to just structure it so, like you were saying, so that the share of wallet was not that much, but you're actually insuring something that could take out a household. I think that's a beautiful thing. And so, Neto, Dr. Neto is the guy who started it. Really articulate entrepreneur. Really loved meeting him in Abuja. They actually leveraged the Pandemic Tech Accelerator, and then got into Techstars Impact here, which is really cool to see. And that's part of the thing where you work with the Pandemic Tech Accelerator, you get on this on the radar of the Tech Ranch, you then leverage it up to getting into Techstars, and now, it looks like that they're poised for solving this same set of problems across many countries in Africa, which is kind of cool. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
That's the sort of story that's kind of exciting to see that, you can see that, there's another guy named Emmanuel, he's another doctor, he's got a company called Inoculate. The eight part is a number 8. And he's essentially has inoculations for families. Part of it is an education issue where a lot of times, traditional Western medicine, this is the first generation that's getting exposure to that. And they might have been addressing some other previous type of, they're going to, hey, let's get into using Western medicine to take this on. And he's told me, Emmanuel's told me stories. He actually is on one of our programs called the Venture Outfitter. So every week we have entrepreneurs virtually call in to this one interaction program. And it's always interesting to hear about what Emmanuel's up against about trying to get, the education process, as well as how he's saving lives and building a good business doing it. And it's really touching. I mean, you can't not love what both of those entrepreneurs are doing.
What was it you said? You were interested in companies building human?
Technology that meets human need. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, I've always been a disruptive technology guy. I worked for Steve Jobs straight out of college. And so I got to do all sorts of really cool things at Steve Jobs startup. Had a personal tragedy, and I decided that what I wanted to see is how can we help the entrepreneurs that are taking on those issues, whether they're in Nigeria or Mexico, or we have some interesting stuff happening in Guatemala right now. We have some interesting technology that's coming out of South Korea. It's kind of interesting. Just pick stuff up here, drop it off there, and see what happens.
Awesome.
If you've not been to the tech stack, you should go. It's a wonderful event, and I was there when Well and the Well guys presented.
Their demo day?
Yeah, their demo day. That was an event. You kind of leave there so inspired, and it's really a social impact when you see the work that they're doing. The example I was going to give kind of will follow on the health side as well. The project that we started, that was funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, of aggregating bottom of the pyramids pharmacy or medicine dispensary. Well, we were trying to address several issues. One, the issues of fake medication, because there's a whole lot of that. And despite the fact that we have a regulatory body in Nigeria there, like NAFDAC, it still presents a lot of problems. Two, a lot of the medicine dispensaries or so-called pharmacists or chemists are mom and pop. They're not your value chain like the Walgreens or the CVS, which means when they invest their capital into purchasing stock, that's their entire life savings there, right? And until they sell, they cannot replenish, which means that you find yourself in environments where critical life-saving medicine might be out of stock, and the person is not going to restock it until they sell enough. Then you also have an increasing rise in opioid abuse or codeine abuse in Nigeria there, which is not regulated. So how do you track it? So we said, let's use technology and aggregate that. So very similar. What we went was an inventory system based on your smartphone that we could do an inventory of everything you have within your store. Then build a payment solution on top of the inventory system that helps you track your inventory movement, then connect you with every other local store within. What that then does is, if I can aggregate 15 local small mom and pop pharmacy dispensaries, now their purchasing power to go to the drug producers then increases. And when we rolled this out within the first 3 months, we were able to aggregate within a very small area sales up to the value of about 20 million. And I can't do the conversion to dollars here. 20 million naira. And that increased the purchasing power so much so that the individual entrepreneurs saw the advantage of being aggregated into this platform. And although it's a platform, it's tech, it's social impact as well. It's making changes. Now we can make sure that the drugs that are now distributed are coming from one source. It's regulated. It's original medicine. It's not fake medicine that causes more or whatsoever.
You mentioned something about drug abuse.
Yes.
Did it help solve that?
Well, it's still an ongoing project. So what it then does is you do not have the kind of regulations that you have here where nothing is off the shelf, right? You could walk into any pharmacy and you can pretty much buy anything there, right? So the question then, the first question then starts with who's selling the most? How can you track where the most of these opioids are being dispersed out? So by having a platform where I now have an inventory of what every store has, I can tell you where the spikes of all the opioids abusers is. Now, let me pivot to the World Health Organization.
What is the penetration though? I mean, if you're going to say that's tracking all that, that's a whole country, what is the penetration of that startup for it to do that?
Right now we're in 5 cities within Nigeria, so it's, like I said, the test run of this was from the grant funding was for the first 3 years of establishing this, and now we're just rolling it out. So the penetration is getting there. But at the same time, we've been able to collect enough data there to the organizations that you mentioned, like the World Health Organization, or organizations, DFIs, that are willing to fund that as a startup. Now I have the data to back it up to say this is where, this is the trends that we're seeing around in this particular pockets of areas or wherever we deployed this. And now they want to deploy that more to capture more information.
So I'm also going to try to also answer this question a bit because, so there was a company, the question also was, what company do I find interested or doing interesting things in that space? There was a company called Tomato Just, which is pretty much a founder, went to Harvard Business School, and I think during one of her, even Bill and Melinda Gates exchange programs or something of the sort, was in Nigeria and saw a lot of like tomatoes running on the road. This was a while back. And in general, very American outsider tradition, like, you know what, I'm gonna get all these tomatoes, create a company, and put the tomatoes in the global market. Okay, so she found out that not only there were so many problems, from small scale farming to using equipment, the mechanization of equipment, a lot of things that were problematic. And she came to realize over the years, and her investors were like, what's happening? But because of the lack of infrastructure for certain things, she had to pretty much go out there, pivot to the nth degree, and actually start farms. She got farmers, and then now she's actually building a factory, which is very different from what she thought it would be, where I would just get tomatoes so they don't rot and put it in the global market. So first of all, I'm super impressed that she's lasted that long. She has no ethnical or ties to Nigeria, and she didn't give up, because I have some experiences that I can say. I think part of what keeps me going is the possibilities that can come from working. So that's definitely one company I admire, and I feel like, especially now that they have farms, next to the farms, they have factories, and now sometimes too, like if you're not a tech startup, it's not the most sexy thing, especially when it comes to trying to get funding. So yeah, so I'm super impressed by that company. Okay, so next question. I actually wanted to ask this question earlier, but I think you guys might have answered it to some extent. What do you think, if you had to what do you think makes Africa exciting?
The opportunities are countless.
Yeah.
A population of over 1 billion, a consumer society, the youngest population in the world. The average age in Africa is the youngest in the world compared to any other continent. A rising middle class, we could go on and listen. By the way, while you were talking there, just I have the pitch deck of tomato juice.
Oh,
so
really?
while you were talking about I was going to talk the pitch deck of tomato juice.
I just found it so interesting that she's still there.
And she's still there.
I'm still gonna be here.
And what she's been able to do, and the expansion,
so impressive.
And the projection of tomato juice, it's just amazing. Again, if you have the resilience and you understand the market and you realize that this is this is the next frontier. That's the way I think it. It's the next frontier, where you have a young population that's vibrant. They're vibrant. They are looking for opportunities. And I always say the cost of technology happened to Africa is that when everybody got smartphones and they could see what was obtainable outside of Africa, everyone wanted that. Like everybody wanted that. When I started going back to Nigeria more frequently, I always use this as my way of seeing the opportunities there. It shocked me that people were watching Keeping Up with the Kardashians in Africa. They were following it. Right. They were following it, but it wasn't just that they were watching it, right? It wasn't the kind of information they were taking in. It was now, we see this, we want to do this. We want to live this kind of life. We want to explore and enjoy or do all of it. So it created this roller coaster of opportunities of where you have a lot of people clamoring for this. Now, like we rightly said when we started, it's not a plug and play. It's not taking what's obtainable in the US and plugging it there. You have to create in such a way where it fits to that market. However, the market is there. It's here for that. And that's what makes it exciting for me. The other part that makes it worthwhile and why I do what I do and why I'm constantly back and forth between Nigeria is when you, be it software, be it tech, be it a physical product, if it's changing the concept of entrepreneurship. It's not just entrepreneurship. It is really social entrepreneurship where I'm not just going to make money out of this, I'm going to change lives. I'm going to make people's lives better. What they couldn't fathom 5 years ago, they're able to do it now. There's this satisfying feeling and this rewarding feeling about that where you can walk away and you can say, I changed the narrative. When I go to our incubation hub in Nigeria and I see young people graduating out of college and starting companies. 20 years ago, that wasn't the narrative. It wasn't. The narrative has changed and you can see people kind of literally pulling themselves up from the bootstrap with technology. And that's the exciting part, and that's what makes it life so becomes very exciting to do, where you are actually making a change, you're actually making a difference, and the rest comes with it.
No, I'm going to have to agree wholeheartedly. The thing about, well, so I grew up a poor kid by U.S. standards. I get it. By U.S. standards, I grew up a poor kid. Didn't know what entrepreneurship was, and so when I discovered entrepreneurship, I kind of fell off the deep end and that's partially why I do the work I do now, right? Just to be in these countries and actually be both in Nigeria, where you see that hunger that you're pointing to, and then you see this transformative ability to actually, the number of people, the number of doctors that were involved as entrepreneurs in that one thing. One of the guys lost, 3 brothers, and he had a lot of pain that brought him to that program, and to now see that, they're never coming back, but at least that energy could be used in a transformative way to see that hunger. In Egypt, what was interesting was to see, an economy shift from a state economy to now you have individuals. And even though some of that stuff I understand now is illegal, like, it's some of the entrepreneurship that I was told about, that was told like in a hush, but I was in Cairo, in New Cairo. Some of the stuff that the first revolution was a good one. The second revolution some of the people like in kind of very quiet ways were like, well, that was a little bit complex, or not necessarily perceived as good. But what's exciting anyway is that people are saying, hey, wait, that, you know, my father's state-run type of experience, we don't have to live in that. And to see people waking up into entrepreneurship in the same way that, you know, me, the poor kid that grew up in San Antonio, that then I got kicked out of high school, I didn't think I was going to go to college, got to go to college, and then all these opportunities opened up for me, to see that there's the possibility of that and have it be transformative, that's real exciting. I mean, you know, I look at it through my own lens, but I actually get excited about it because you can see people all across that continent, actually all across the world, that are starting to wake up like that. Economists are starting to realize entrepreneurship is the most transformative force for a country's GNP, bar none.
Yeah. So along that line, so for entrepreneurs or people trying to start companies, you know, in that, you know, geographic region, what industries would you say, okay, this is probably, you know, I would say go into this industry because of A, B, and C. If you had to pick an industry, or, you know, which ones would you pick? Just to advise.
My answers might be biased because of what I do.
Okay, so go ahead.
So for one, my first one will always be agriculture. And people will say agriculture, like, well, you can apply a lot of tech to agriculture. And food security. Food security is the rock bed for any nation, right? If you have food security and you can feed your people, it's a wonderful feeling, right? And I think I would pick that as the opportunity to start out with, because it's not mechanized. It's not to the standards of what we have here in the US. While I was in Abuja in December, I visited a
You have a ranch, right?
Yeah, I have a ranch.
So that's probably
why I should say, that's why my answers will be biased. I have a ranch on the outskirts of Abuja. Food security, when we're talking about food security, the processed meat, or like what we'll get here, if I want to buy a steak, I'll walk into my HEB and the steak is already packaged. You rarely have anything like that in Nigeria, right? However, you take a country like Botswana, the number one generator of foreign direct investment into Botswana is the exportation of beef to Europe, because they've captured that market, they've processed it, they know what they're doing, right? Whereas in Nigeria, it's a walk from Chad all the way down to Nigeria with the cows. It's very nomadic. So apply some technology to it, apply some modern way of doing things, and that will be my first industry to work on. So you have companies that are doing agricultural logistics, some kind of farming methodology that you use tech to improve your yields. That's not my area of specialty. I just have the ranch and I employ those people to do that. So that's the first one. The other one will be fintech and the banking industry. That will be the next one.
Isn't fintech already saturated? For anyone else that knows the ecosystem, isn't fintech already very saturated?
I don't think it has even started.
No.
If you think selectively, yes.
It is not started.
I feel like everybody and the baby mama has a new fintech. No, really though. But okay.
But I don't think it's started. I think the opportunities of fintech is just started. We think so. You look at the example of Kenya, where it started out where mobile money and the ability to transfer funds.
M-Pesa?
Yes. And you look at how robust the banking system is here versus what you have there, then you agree with Ope and say it is not started, and there's a lot of opportunities.
So there are a lot of fintechs, but they're not solving a lot of problems, is what you're saying.
Yeah. So, okay. So when I think about fintech opportunities today in Nigeria, I would not talk about like the very low level of straightforward digital banking, agency banking. Let's go to like the whole range of what's possible in financing, right? Talk about infrastructure. infrastructure is really the issue, right? How does financing and infrastructure blend together to create value? And you can see that across industries. We talked about farming the other time. The way I see it, in fact, I'm just seeing infrastructure financing. Where am I going to get these tomatoes from? I can't get them. Okay, I'm just going to fund farms, right? And then get the produce, right? So it's more like you're financing farms in a way. So in healthcare, there's that opportunity. In manufacturing, there's those opportunities as well, and it's just widespread across a lot of industries. We're not just thinking about just transfer of money without value. Today, we have a lot of transfer of money without real value, and understandably because it's like I can make profits easily by lending.
It's the lowest hanging fruit.
When you think about like, and it's the lowest hanging fruit, like you know, but infrastructure, I think the biggest winners in fintech in Nigeria's future would be the people who do like some sort of infrastructure financing.
What do you mean by infrastructure in fintech? Do you have specifics of like?
Common 360.
Oh, okay.
So Common 360 has two businesses, right?
Yeah.
Common 360 is a logistics firm. It started by trucking, as I said, super for trucking kind of stuff, right? And on the flip side, they are actually doing financing for trucks, right? You know, so that's how we're creating like the supply of trucks, and they just raised $30 million from Goldman a couple of months ago. That's one space. That's what I think.
Another one is coming very soon in the auto industry as well, and that's why I feel like in the fintech we've done the low-hanging fruits, so there are a lot of opportunities. So
when you said another one's coming, which other one's coming?
I can't let it out yet. The third one that I will pick will be the healthcare. I think there's a lot of opportunities there as well, as you have alluded to. So, like I said, my answer will be biased. I am definitely in
agriculture and healthcare.
It's interesting because your examples reminded me of two companies that we've had a thumb in that went into Africa. Both of them are operating in 5 different countries, and I'm going to forget off the top of my head which ones. But one of them is trees.org. If you go to, it's a Washington, D.C. based organization called trees.org.
Trees or trees?
Trees, as in just trees.
Okay.
What's interesting for them in the concept of food security is they will take a set of coaches that can teach farmers how to actually have tree groves. And they figured out, you know, for each one of the different geographies, what is the set of trees that you need to have for this one grove. And they actually help the farmer finance it, plant it at the right time so they have, you know, fruit trees in a full grove. It's really interesting what they're doing. The key thing was, instead of just being the whole supply chain, what they have is an app that enable coaches. The coaches get paid for what they're up to. You know, it's a low-cost coach, but the coaches are able to then manage across all these different farmers that they're coaching. A really cool model. The organization's been running for a while, and the support that we did was just help. Since, you know, me and several of my guys have technical backgrounds. Hey, you know, as you leave this one platform and go to this next platform, how do you do it so you can scale? They're doing some pretty cool stuff. That's trees.org. Another one that's out of Norway that went in food security was they came up with a model for fisheries. It's called Willing Hands. And this is on the southwest corner of Norway in a city called Kristiansand. That Willing Hands, you know, is now essentially building fisheries so that you have a high-end source of protein that's fairly inexpensive. It's not the cheapest protein you can make, but it's still fairly. And you know, these are fisheries that are actually being made, like a physical type of fisheries that are being produced. So I thought that was pretty cool. But to the spirit of your question about what do you take, one of our companies is called ROS Agriculture. ROS Agriculture, that stands for the Robotic Operating System Applied to Agriculture. What you said reminded me about this as well. What they're doing is they've essentially, you know, the John Deere tractor that cost $250,000. Simple farmers even in this country can't afford that kind of equipment. And even though you have more labor available less expensively in Africa, Matt, the entrepreneur that's running this, he has discovered that, like even in Zimbabwe, I don't remember exactly what this farmer was farming, is actually looking at how in Zimbabwe they can use these low-cost robots with the applications that are all open source. So this is all an open source platform. You buy the tractor, the platform's about a $3,000 platform, and you can replace a lot of the functions that you can get on a $250,000 John Deere platform and do some interesting things. And so now in Matt's case, what he did, and I think this is really innovative about how do you look at around the world, or perhaps some country in Africa, is he's just having weekly call-ins. He publishes a lot about what he's up to. Anyone can join his Zoom calls. Somehow, one of the stories he told me specifically about Zimbabwe is this one gentleman found out, started logging in. There's no money exchanging hands, at least at the time that I talked to Matt. I talked to Matt last week, but I think it's been over the last 4 months that this gentleman's they've been working back and forth. And it was a really inexpensive, low-cost way to do market discovery from a U.S. standpoint of market discovery by just saying, okay, we're going to have this once a week, 1 hour call. It's going to be Zoom. Zoom costs $45 a month for this level. So, so you're spending, and you're just educating people, and then hearing what they're saying back. And it sounds like that's going to end up being a place that Matt's company, Ross Agriculture, is going to be leveraging a lot of its knowledge and then making money out of, not just publishing to. So I think that those type of models where it's open source, low cost, and you can do broadcast, and you're willing to be interactive about it, to do market discovery, that's what I would do if I had it. That's kind of what we're doing anyway. Yeah. We're just doing it about entrepreneurship, and he's kind of copying our model with regards to robotic agriculture.
I'm already interested.
Yeah, exactly. That's so interesting.
I'll tell you why I'm interested. It's because you said something that hit home. This past December, while in Nigeria on our ranch, we have planted 20 hectares of corn, right? And the John Deere machine, like it's $1 million, it's difficult to afford. You're renting that and leasing that, right? Mm-hmm. The availability was not there, so we had to get labor. So, like you rightly said, labor is inexpensive. You could get a whole lot of labor, but you have laborers trying to clear 20 hectares of corn. Your corn starts going bad on it if you don't get into it on time, right? Or you have the beds, or you have things kind of like you're losing money there. So those kind of low-cost robotics is what I'm interested in, and that's where I say technology driving agriculture and changing the output.
Well, one of the other things that's really interesting about this specific model, the reason I took personal interest in it, is the cool thing is the labor that's getting replaced, you put them in school to learn how to program robots on the Ross agricultural system. Those people right now, like in Austin, Texas, if you had a Ross capable software developer, they're making $150 an hour. There's not enough Ross developers. And so you could also go, one of the tech leaders, he's there in Abuja or Lagos or somewhere else, and say, okay, here's the program that, the engineering school is certainly teaching some things, but they might not know about this platform. And so you're taking the labor and you're turning them into engineers, which is, we're going to continue to need, both in this country and there, to lever up on that. And it's a brilliant thing. It's rossagriculture.com, but I'd be happy to introduce you.
Definitely.
That's really interesting, and that is a perfect segue for our final question. I want you guys to answer the question, and then we'll open it up to the audience. You've already touched on it, but in your opinion, what are some ways we can create strategic partnerships, like with different parts of that ecosystem, like since we're in Austin, specifically in the Austin ecosystem. So I'm thinking institutions like, for example, UT has an accelerator program, I think that works specifically with, might be India, but just getting institutions to do that, or just working with VC firms, letting them know that, hey, there's indeed stuff happening, would you be interested in hearing? But I want to hear what you guys think, or ways you believe a strategic partnership could be struck, or the different ways you think that can happen?
In my case, I don't think there's anything more powerful than having an entrepreneur, wherever he or she might be, connecting to an entrepreneur that is here in Austin, right? And then, as an example, the guy I was just mentioning, Matt Schroeder is his name. He's kind of heads down, a little bit of an engineer, a little bit of, kind of a geek. I'm sorry to say it. He's a geek. The thing about it is, what we need to do is then discover, like TechRanch and other organizations, discover guys like him that are already connected and then enhance that. I think that's the most interesting thing. I think it's hard to get organizations like UT to get behind things because bureaucracies look to the past and sorry to rag on UT, I went to UT. They're built to preserve the past. It's the past plus 3% is what's going to happen. In this case, like you were pointing out, it's crazy what's going to happen next year by this time, right? It's explosive growth. So I would actually I would think, and one of the things, if anyone out there is like, from this conversation, it's like I'd like to see the two people, we watch them for a while and then we enhance, whether it's like through grant programs or other stuff, or just connecting people around them, connecting organizations around them, because typically they're going to lead faster than anyone else. They will discover faster than anyone else.
So finding entrepreneurs already and creating the collaboration and enhancing their effort.
Yeah, like I would follow this guy, right? Just based on the story that you've already said, I would follow. He knows faster. The other thing that we haven't said that I want to make sure I say something about is, in my experience of getting to spend so much time outside this country, the thing that I think we should also look for are what are the technologies that are, what are the ways of doing things that are happening out there that can be brought back here or other places. Even a non-tech example was the Grameen Bank was developed in, the microloan bank that was developed in Bangladesh that's now going around the world. And now, oh, by the way, we're finally doing this for the poor in this country. It was discovered someplace else. The repayment rates are higher than any other commercial bank, or not any other commercial bank, I can't say that, but than the average commercial bank. It was an idea that was discovered someplace else, and then is now finally knocking on the doors of the US. That sort of stuff that refers, it's called innovation blowback is the official name of that concept. I would be, especially for those of you all that are from Africa, I would actually have you be considering what's the innovation blowback. Like, like in Nigeria, obviously we need the jolly rice. Not the Ghana jolly rice.
Okay, awesome. Sorry, you want to go?
Yeah. To answer your question, the Better Collective, you want to get something like that going, you have this kind of events. Austin is fast growing as a tech, well, it's always been a tech place. Now it's blowing, it's exploding. And having this kind of connections plugging. Again, one of the other questions is, how do we build this? Through networking. You plug people. Funny thing, our place is in there. I never knew him in Nigeria. I don't think we've ever met in Nigeria. We met when we got here to Austin, but our sphere of connections of the people we know because of the kind of space in which we've been working in is well connected, right? It's like by the time we start talking, you know this person, I know this person, oh wow, we're connected in this. So networking. Now I have somebody who's going to give me a technology that I'm going to be using for my fire, right? So it's that kind of networking that I think you continue to build out. That will enable such kind of interchange. And to your point about global innovation, back and forth, or the exchange of ideas. I like that example of somebody setting up a Zoom call, and it's just 1 hour, let's listen in, wherever anyone can plug in. You never know who you're going to meet within that kind of environment, or that kind of network that could help in plugging you to whatever startup you want to start up, or whatever pursuit or endeavor. in a place like Africa as a whole.
Anyone want to continue with that line? Do you have any thoughts, ideas before we go on to questions? If anyone has any.
I mean, I would echo what Kevin said. I think one of the exciting things I like about what's happening in Africa is because of the connectedness that's happened in the past 10, 15 years in that continent with social media and internet and smartphones and stuff. People definitely are much more aware of what's going on outside of their countries, and they're definitely very interested in either adopting or trying stuff that they're seeing or coming up with their version, right? And I think a lot of cool stuff is being done in those countries that we here could benefit from as well. And I think that there's, I know just from the example with Egypt, several entrepreneurs that are, either friends of mine or related to, people that I know that have really good products that they manufacture in Egypt, and they're looking for ways to export it to the U.S. And they're just like, they keep asking me, like, who do I go to? Or, do I set up with the U.S. Embassy, a Chamber of Commerce, or, what's the cost? It's just kind of, they have no idea, right? And I think we also have no idea that they have these products, right? Or that there's things there that we could benefit from too and like. So I think that there, could serve some value in creating that ability to exchange what's available and what's being done on both sides.
Anyone else? Or any questions? I guess we're on to questions now.
How well does the culture of Africa deal with highly asymmetric applications? Like we were talking about agriculture and bringing in robotics for it. Well, what if you look at the soil and the plants as robots, but organically based robots, and you start looking at how to access the genes that are there, nothing new, and then you start changing the way the plants grow, would they be suspicious of anything like that? It would technically be organic, but it would be unnatural.
No, they wouldn't be.
I think in East Africa they did something with rice.
Yeah, I was really. It's not only in East Africa. I think rice has been one that they.
Well, for instance, rice that you want to have a higher concentration of particular nutrients.
Yeah, but they found a way to make it grow with very little water.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Or an agriculture that doesn't runs on a tenth of the water.
Yeah, so the adoption is there.
Right.
It will be adopted. It's been proven. It's been tried. There've been companies or there've been organizations who's come in and who's done that. And if you can show them that their yields will increase, the ability to farm or what it will take to get it done will reduce the effort. The level of effort is reduced, and your yield is increased. You will get adoption.
Like a city, will they be open to incorporating agriculture into their infrastructure? Well, I mean, not like a rooftop garden, but different, or maybe it grows up the side of the building.
I don't think anyone will stop you.
All right, but I mean, it's like some cultures have resistance when they see things that are not reflective of what they have seen.
Well, that's even different between Austin and Dallas, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so, there's certain things that happen here faster than Dallas and vice versa as well. So the answer is yes. It's just a matter of finding the right places.
The answer is yes, but I will also then have the comment of, again, understanding the nuances of each market. In the local farming communities, you will most likely get more adoption. In the cities, it can be a little bit interesting and tricky, and I'll give you an example. There was this article, I think it was actually in CNN, that was talking about how Lagos is one of the most stressful cities in the world, and one of the examples that was used is that in traffic in Lagos, you could literally cook a whole meal from scratch, from organic, because everything is sold on the street, right? The idea to now have buildings for agricultural purposes like that, the needs of the people in the cities are much more different. For a city of 20 million people that are constantly stuck in traffic, the average day you spend in traffic within a city like Lagos is probably 6 hours at a minimum a day. The ability for you to now say, I want you to come farm on your roof, might not necessarily be adopted as much as somewhere in one of the other cities like outside of Lagos or in another state. So
I think it's also how you sell it, I feel like sometimes adoption of things is sort of Is it cool to have this?
Yeah.
Is it like new age? Is it, so I guess that's a big part of market adoption in those parts, I think. You talked about 2 cell phones.
Yeah.
Being cool, being rich, having 2 cell phones. Yeah, so, yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I will say, it doesn't, I mean, sure, if someone's working on the logistics part of it, there's a whole supply chain. What I've also come to realize is that working on just a single part of a supply chain is really hard to create a very different outcome. So if you fix something, there's still a loggerhead, there's still something going on here. So yes, let's do gene modification, let's do logistics, let's do whatever it is, and figure out the A to Z of that value chain, supply chain, all of it. That's when I feel like we really see a different outcome, or much better returns and all of that. But yeah. Any other questions?
I got a question. Yeah, I would just love to hear your thoughts on the cloud computing market within Africa. Here in the United States, you see organizations and companies making billions of dollars off of it. But similar to what you said, you can't really do a plug and play. So I would love to understand your thoughts on if Africa is ready for cloud computing and what that might look like. Even over the last 10 years, you see a lot of new organizations innovate within the United States because of cloud computing. So just love to get your perspectives on it and where you see the market going.
So I think it's already taken hold. Like he's one of the hospital, what's it called? I mean, the one example that came to mind as you're saying that is operating in the cloud. Now they have, it's essentially an operating system for clinics. Now they have to deal with the connectivity issue that every once in a while they don't have connectivity for some of the more remote. They don't have constant connectivity for the remote clinics, and so they came up with a local, cloud kind of solution for dealing with that. So there's syncing, but even in that, you're still using cloud. They're using cloud because, like, the example was the client of the clinic or the patient of the clinic that actually ends up plugging into multiple clinics. The entrepreneur doctor that actually did that came up with some really, I don't know all the different technical things. I mean, I have a technical background, so it's not about the technology. I don't remember exactly what their architecture was, just because I've seen too many things to kind of remember everything about any one of them. But they're already operating in the cloud. They just happen to also have some local syncing kind of stuff, because their configuration is to sell a solar cell, solar array with a battery, with a computer, and then stuff that actually interacts with the doctors on their cell phones.
In my opinion, I think there definitely is a big gap in that market. So far, it's been more of like, I recently heard that, they bring people from India just because they also can't find people around. So those are some difficulties you might find, user operators and things like that. But definitely, like cloud computing, there's definitely space and gaps and gaps and gaps in that industry market.
Can I let me ask something to that. So, cloud computing, yes, is taking hold, but I think just like in a lot of other examples we talk about here, it's only useful in Africa when it's about specific solutions, right? So like healthcare, you could definitely be a really large business in that space, right? Providing a specific solution. Could also be government. In most of the technology companies I know that like African bread in Africa are focused on like business to government, right? Or business to large businesses, not necessarily consumer tech, right? Like you, like cool, but cool doesn't really go beyond like the cheap smartphones and all of that, right? Because purchasing power parity is also still low among users. So when you think cloud, don't just think like infrastructure, think like solutions, right? And when you also think of within America, some of the biggest tech companies is really solutions that they sell. Microsoft, IBM, these still solutions, right? So yeah, solutions more. Think solutions more like just infrastructure.
Awesome. Thank you all for coming. What I also like to put out there is that we have a website, thebetacollective.com. If you have a project you're working on, I try to put out like a bi-weekly newsletter just to put, let people know what you're working on or whatever it is or whatever's happening in the ecosystem. So if you're interested, just go to the website and put your information in there. And there are other things too you can find in there. And thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
And please have a drink or grab something so I'll just take that.
I was just so excited. It was like, I was excited. It was like the last one too, because it really just gives, like it was, this, the cut of no, exactly.
So,
like it was right.
Yeah. How long did you spend
Only there for about 8 or 9 days, so not kind of long time. I looked at media content as part of what we'd like to do is my team. If you're back and forth,
I guess just trying to be kind of challenging. What I would say is I've used myself now to
just an actual definitely. For X and I call it mine. On these startups, I'd love to figure out what they stand for.
But I want to talk to you because I reached out to you. I was actually going to be like, do you sleep? Thank you for trying. Do you sleep?
Let me get it out there.
So that's how I was
like digging into that.
Yeah.
Wait, sometimes people think of this as a talent agency. It's discover talent, develop talent, or connect talent on pace and scale. Yeah, a lot of times, like you with regards to something like textures makes more sense. And then sometimes help with
medium, so it's ROS.
ROS is what it is.
Okay, this one in Estonia.
Well, he might have it listed as Estonia because
I've gone there, gone to
yeah, but they're based like right now.
But
I just want to get one of my what's going on in Africa.
This is the kind of network I'm looking for.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying. We also right now we're
Yeah.
coffee is just the initial product. No, just starting out. I just started last year. So please understand what it takes to process the all that. So yeah, now it's like, okay, so then I'm like, I might actually reach out to people from that region, because a lot of people live there, but and then you go to Europe, but it's hard to find.
That's based there?
Based there?
Yeah, a lot of
There's a lot of changing people.
Yeah, which is why I took lost too. Because that's like that. I have to be in living situations. I have extension family. So I can save money in that, but also every